Over half of Americans forced to work multiple jobs now hold a higher education degree. Your college diploma has become not a shield against grueling labor, but its direct cause. For decades you were told, study hard and you'll be secure. That lie has been shattered. If even the most correct steps no longer guarantee basic stability, what can protect you? This paradox is no accident. It's a symptom pointing to two fundamental failures in the American economic machine. This brings us to two main questions. First, how did the most productive nation in history create an economy where 376,000 people are forced to work two full-time jobs? That's more than the entire population of Cleveland, all working 80 hours a week. Second, in a country with the most advanced medicine, how do 100 million citizens have $220 billion in medical debt? This sum exceeds the annual GDP of an entire country, like Greece. By the end of this film, you will have 6 keys to understanding this trap. This isn't just a list of problems, it's a hack of the operating system that turned the American dream into an endless marathon for survival. In just 2 minutes, you'll learn about a 1970s event that severed the unwritten contract between you and your employer forever. That unwritten contract was simple. From 1948 to 1973, you worked harder, the country grew wealthier, and so did you. Productivity and wages grew almost in lockstep. Corporate success directly translated into family prosperity. This was the natural order of things. But then, as data from the Economic Policy Institute shows, 2 lines on the graph sharply diverged. Productivity continued to skyrocket, while your hourly pay virtually stagnated. Imagine the economy as a living organism. Until 73, it breathed steadily. Every inhale of productivity growth was followed by a proportional exhale of wage growth. Afterward, the system began taking deep inhales, almost ceasing to exhale. The gigantic chasm between these lines represents trillions of dollars redirected from your pockets to corporate profits. This change shattered not only the economy, but also the lives of an entire generation. What did this look like on the ground, away from the graphs? Take the archetype of a Gen X survivor. His parents lived in a world where one breadwinner's job provided a home, a car, and college for the children. He started his career in the 80s, believing in the same deal, company loyalty in exchange for lifelong stability. But his career faced a wave of layoffs in the 90s and the 2008 crisis. His salary stagnated and responsibilities grew. He did everything right, but the rules changed without his consent. His pivotal moment came at 48, after 20 years of service. He was laid off. Now he works in retail for minimum wage, just to keep his health insurance. He feels the uncomfortable synthetic uniform and sees in the store window's reflection not a confident manager, but a person who lost the game. But frozen wages were only one half of the vice. While income stalled, the prices of the 3 most important things in an American's life began their catastrophic rise. You're told about moderate inflation, yet you feel like you have less money. This is because the official Consumer Price Index averages the cost of a basket of goods, including depreciating televisions. But when we look at the 3 pillars of the American dream, the picture changes. Over the past 40 years, the cost of housing, higher education, and medical services grew hundreds of times faster than the median wage. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has 3 enormous holes drilled into it, labeled housing, healthcare, and education. No matter how much water you pour, the bucket will never fill. You've been caught in a mathematical trap, and to keep you from escaping, the system offered a new, enticing myth. It created a shiny new door labeled freedom, but this door led to an even tighter cage. The trap has sprung. Let's consolidate 2 key takeaways. First, the money from your labor stopped reaching you due to the contract severed in the 70s. Second, the cost of life's essentials exploded, making survival on a single salary impossible. This created a perfect storm for exploitation. Millions of desperate people became fertile ground for a new solution offered by the system, the flexibility of freelancing and the freedom of the gig economy. We've explored how the old promise of stability was destroyed. Now let's examine how you were lured into a new trap, promised freedom, but in reality, stripped of the last remnants of security. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity: be your own boss. After the 2008 crisis, this call resonated like a breath of fresh air. Advertisements painted a picture of freedom, working with a laptop on the beach, flexible hours, control over your life. Behind this facade, however, lay cold, corporate calculation. The status of an independent contractor allowed companies to shed all responsibility, no minimum wage, overtime pay, health insurance, or retirement contributions. All risks and expenses, from car depreciation to taxes, were shifted onto you. This freedom is akin to a mirage of an oasis in the desert. From afar, it beckons with coolness, but in reality, it's just scorching air. This system is perfectly suited for individuals whose higher education degree became not a key to success, but the first step in an endless race for survival. Meet the millennial juggler. He believed a master's degree would open doors to a stable career. His salary from his main job barely covers his massive student debt and rising rent. His pivotal moment came when he realized he was taking on app-based gigs not for a new gadget, but to pay next month's bills. His day, 9 hours in the office, 20 minutes for a sandwich in the car, followed by another 5 hours driving for food delivery late into the night. This isn't a side hustle, it's a second job. And he's not alone. Over 376,000 Americans work 2 full-time jobs. That's an 80-plus hour work week. This new reality became the norm only because the old system of stability was deliberately dismantled. Where did the world disappear to, where one could work their entire life at a single company and retire with financial security? It was a social contract, a lifelong career, employer-provided insurance, paid vacations. However, globalization, automation, and most importantly, a shift in corporate philosophy toward short-term profit maximization shattered this contract. Employee loyalty began to be viewed as an unnecessary expense, while a flexible workforce of contractors became an efficient tool for cost reduction. The old model was like a sturdy house. The system didn't build a more flexible tent alongside it. It first demolished the house, and then offered the tent as the only shelter from the rain. Do you or anyone you know have experience with gig work? Was it a choice for freedom or pure necessity? Formulate your answer in one word: choice or necessity. Even when it appears to be a choice, it's often dictated by the pressure of an invisible force that holds millions hostage and compels them to agree to any terms. The name of this force is debt. Medical bills, student loans, mortgages. These are not merely financial obligations. They are modern shackles, chaining millions to an endless wheel of overwork. This is the debt machine. Now we will demonstrate how this machine operates and why the most terrifying debt in America can emerge overnight, even if you have insurance. What single thing can destroy a family's financial future overnight, even if you have good insurance? A routine hospital visit. You were sold the idea of reliable protection, but modern insurance is a sieve. High deductible plans, co-pays, and out-of-network clauses shift thousands of dollars in expenses onto you before the insurance company pays a single cent. This illusion of security is shattered by one figure. 100 million adult Americans have medical debt, almost 1 in 3. The total sum is $220 billion. This is unimaginable in any other developed country. The fear of such a bill is an effective lever that compels you to hold on to a job you dislike. But if medical debt is a sudden catastrophe, another type of debt is a lifelong sentence that you voluntarily sign up for. Higher education. You were told it's an investment in yourself, and at 18 you easily took on tens of thousands of dollars in obligations. Student debt works like gravity. You easily make the leap, taking out a loan, but then spend your entire life expending energy just to avoid falling, instead of ascending. Tuition costs skyrocketed, outpacing inflation hundreds of times, while graduate salaries remained grounded. It's a mathematically losing game. Our millennial juggler's degree did not become a ticket to success. It became an anchor that chained him to a second job. Debt is the ideal tool for control. It compels you to run on a wheel without stopping, because stopping means financial collapse. And the most potent weapon of this system isn't even the debt itself. It's what it does to your psyche. What could be more terrifying than debt? The constant, exhausting fear of it. Our Gen X survivor avoided student loans, but he was laid off. His temporary insurance proved useless when hospital bills arrived. His shock wasn't the figures on the bill. It was the moment, sitting in his kitchen at 2 in the morning, when he realized his entire life was now dictated by a single feeling: fear of the next envelope in the mail. This fear paralyzes. It compels him to accept lower pay, tolerate toxic environments, and avoid taking risks. Debt and the fear of it are the invisible shackles that hold the entire system in place. So, the machine of coercion is assembled from 4 elements. First, your labor is no longer adequately compensated due to the severed contract. Second, the cost of life's essentials has exploded. Third, stability has been replaced by the mirage of freedom in the gig economy. And fourth, the debt machine serves as the whip that compels everyone to keep running. However, this system would have sparked a revolt were it not for one crucial factor. How did it make us not just tolerate this, but pretend to like it? We've analyzed the economics. Now we will expose the psychology. Prepare to see how your own burnout was marketed to you as ambition. Why are your social media feeds saturated with a productivity cult, where waking up at 5 in the morning and working 24/7 are presented as badges of honor? How did boasting about one's exhaustion become fashionable? These are the 5th and 6th keys to the trap, combined into one: psychological warfare. The system pulled off a brilliant trick. It took economic coercion, your need to work 2 jobs, and repackaged it as a virtue, as the personal choice of an ambitious individual. Your own burnout was sold to you as a premium product. It's like a painkiller that doesn't cure the illness but induces euphoria from its symptoms, compelling you to ignore a fatal system failure. And this deception isn't confined to the online world. Corporations have mastered this art to perfection, creating an entire vocabulary to make you work more for the same money. We're like family here. This phrase signifies that you are expected to demonstrate family loyalty and sacrifice, but without the right to unconditional support. Passion for work. This word transforms your dedication to your craft into a tool for exploitation, where any request for overtime pay appears as a lack of commitment. Flexible environment. This often implies your flexibility to work late into the night, responding to your boss's emails. The system makes you feel guilty for wanting to leave work on time. It has transformed the basic right to rest into a sign of laziness, hacking not only your wallet, but also your sense of self-worth. And this is what a person who has fully embraced this ideology looks like. He genuinely takes pride in his burnout. His Instagram is filled with photos of a laptop against a beach backdrop, captioned, "No days off." He posts stories with his 5th cup of coffee at 10 in the evening, viewing it as a symbol of success. Yet behind this facade lies constant anxiety and the fear of being left behind. It's not the joy of creation, it's panic. Our millennial juggler experienced this firsthand. His initial enthusiasm for the hustle gave way to a catharsis when he realized his second job wasn't building his own empire. It was merely paying interest on debts to the actual owners of the empire. His pride transformed into anger. He understood that he had been deceived. Now, all 6 elements of the arsenal are at our disposal. Observe how this machine operates in its entirety. First, the severed contract deprives you of a fair share of your labor. Then, the vice-like grip of living costs makes this financial shortfall critical. The illusion of the gig economy and the erosion of stable employment strip you of protection, offering a false escape. The debt machine shackles you to this mechanism with invisible chains. And finally, the psychological trap compels you to believe that this relentless grind is, in fact, success. It's a closed, self-sustaining loop. Now that we perceive the entire scheme, the primary question shifts. It's no longer, why am I working so much? It's, how do we break this machine? To dismantle the machine, one must first understand how it was constructed. Its pivotal component is the destruction of stability. How did the world that built the American middle class, where a single job could support a family, evaporate within 1 generation? For the Gen X survivor, this path seemed guaranteed. The post-war social contract was unbreakable. Corporations provided lifelong employment and pensions in exchange for loyalty. However, in 1981, Jack Welch of General Electric proclaimed that the primary objective was not employees, but shareholders. Over a decade, he laid off over 100,000 people, earning the moniker Neutron Jack. Stability didn't simply vanish, it was deliberately dismantled for the sake of profits. Companies began announcing record earnings while simultaneously terminating thousands of employees, thereby shattering the very concept of loyalty. And this dismantling gave birth to a new form of employment, which was marketed to you as flexibility. Why do Americans with good jobs and insurance today fear falling ill more than losing their employment? Because the system of protection has transformed into a source of fear. Previously, companies bore the risk, defined benefit pensions, and low-deductible insurance offered security. However, high-deductible plans then emerged. From 2006 to 2021, the average family plan deductible increased by over 450%. Pensions were replaced by 401k plans, where all market risk shifted onto you. Security became a commodity that you now purchase from your own employer. It's like paying $500 a month for insurance but postponing a doctor's visit due to a $5,000 deductible. Possessing insurance ceased to mean access to health care, but the next assault targeted your very status as an employee. Why is an individual who works 40 hours a week in the office of the same company not considered its employee on paper? This is the paradox of the perpetual temporary worker. Initially, contract work was intended for niche specialists on short-term projects. However, corporations began to massively apply this model to regular positions to circumvent three primary expenses: Social Security contributions, health insurance, and overtime pay. Flexibility became a euphemism for instability. Imagine someone who worked for 5 years at a single company as a contractor. They are terminated the day before they were legally slated to be converted to a full-time employee. This is not freedom, it is vulnerability. And then, this model of instability was merged with digital platforms, creating a perfect storm. Why is our Gen X survivor, with 20 years of experience, compelled to take a low-paying retail job? Because his experience and loyalty were devalued. You are told that this is a natural market evolution, demanding adaptability. But for the majority, it meant a loss of income. Over 376,000 Americans work 2 full-time jobs. This is not a choice. It is a direct consequence of declining income from primary employment. The demise of the 9-to-5 schedule is not about flexibility. It is about transferring all economic risks onto you. It's a constant anxiety, akin to a low-frequency hum in one's ears. It's a contractor going to work with a fever because he won't be paid for sick leave. Having lost stable income, millions found themselves defenseless against the primary predator of the American economy: 100 million adult Americans, $220 billion in medical debt. How did the wealthiest nation create a system where illness systematically leads to bankruptcy? You are told that this is the price of innovation and the freedom to choose your doctor. Insurance companies assert that high deductibles compel you to be more responsible about your treatment. But here's what's hidden from view. The system is opaque and built on profit, not health. Prices for the same procedure can vary tenfold in neighboring hospitals, and medical debt is the cause of over 60% of personal bankruptcies. This is not a side effect. It is a built-in control mechanism. You enter a hospital that is in-network with your insurance, only to receive a bill for tens of thousands of dollars for an anesthesiologist who was out of network. It's a trap, and it snaps shut even before you receive your first paycheck. Why do Americans with higher education increasingly work multiple jobs? The degree that was supposed to be a ticket to the middle class has transformed into a source of instability. You were sold the idea that it's the best investment, a good debt on the path to a high salary. But the facts indicate otherwise. Diploma inflation means that today, the same job requires a higher degree, yet salaries have not increased. If 30 years ago a simple bachelor's key was sufficient for a lock plus, today the same door demands a complex master's key. The cost of education has outpaced inflation by orders of magnitude. The system creates the ideal debtor, young but without assets, who can be exploited for decades. Indeed, unlike almost all other debts, student loans are virtually impossible to discharge even through bankruptcy. It's a lifelong sentence. Did your degree justify the money and time invested in it? For what reason do people agree to an 80-hour work week or conditions without paid leave? The standard explanation: it's a free market. If you don't like it, leave. This theory presupposes that you and your employer have equal bargaining positions. However, the equation changes when debt is introduced. Debt annihilates freedom of choice. An individual with a monthly payment of $1,500 in loans cannot afford to take risks or resign. Debt acts like gravity in negotiations. It invisibly presses down on your side of the scales. rendering you inflexible while the employer remains light and unburdened. Negotiations shrink from two questions: do I like this job? And is the pay fair? To a single one: will this salary cover my payments? This transforms choice into an illusion. This system appears to be an ideal trap. But one element was missing: an ideology that would compel people to love their cage. How, in an era of incredible technological progress, did we arrive at a culture of 80-hour work weeks? The popular explanation: it's a hustle culture, the personal choice of ambitious individuals. But this is not a choice. It's a mathematical necessity disguised as a lifestyle. Connect all the elements. The severed contract created a money deficit. The destruction of stability eliminated security. The debt machine generated constant pressure. Under these conditions, a second job is not ambition, it's a way to plug a budget hole. The system resembles a treadmill whose incline is continually increased. Simply to avoid sliding backward, you are forced to run faster and faster. The economic machine was constructed. Now, minds needed to be captured. How did they manage to sell us burnout as success? This economic machine operates in three phases. First, the great divergence of the 70s created a deficit of money in your pockets. This was the initial stage. The benefits of your labor ceased to return to you, rendering you vulnerable. Then, the vice-like grip of living costs exacerbated this deficit. Even if your salary had merely stagnated, the explosive rise in prices for housing, healthcare, and education would still have led to a crisis. The combination of income stagnation and rising expenses created an existential threat. And finally, when you found yourself in despair, you were offered a false solution: the illusion of the gig economy. This was a mechanism to monetize your necessity, offering not stability, but merely a way to temporarily plug budget holes, thereby intensifying your insecurity about tomorrow. This constituted the economic component of the machine. However, for it to function flawlessly, a social mechanism of coercion was also required. First, the system dismantled stable employment, stripping away the protective layer from the foundation of your life. All safety nets that once shielded workers were eliminated. Then, into this defenseless ground, the seeds of debt were sown. Student and medical loans became chains that bound the unprotected individual to the necessity of working under any conditions. Debt became a tool of direct coercion. And finally, above all this, an ideological greenhouse was constructed, the psychological trap of hustle culture. It compelled you to believe that your difficult situation was the result of personal shortcomings rather than a systemic failure. It transformed the symptoms of crisis, overwork, and stress into markers of status and ambition. Now that all 6 gears of the machine are visible, we can finally answer the primary questions posed at the very beginning. Why are 376,000 people forced to work 80 hours a week in the world's most productive nation? Because since 1973, the benefits of productivity growth have been appropriated by capital owners. The system was restructured to compel everyone else to work more, compensating for stagnant wages and rising prices. Why do 100 million Americans have medical debt? This is not a system error, it is a fundamental characteristic. Medical debt is a powerful lever of fear that binds you to your employer through insurance and forces you to avoid any risk, including changing jobs. The crisis of overwork is not a series of your personal failures. It is the outcome of a deliberately constructed system where the stagnation of the majority's income is a prerequisite for the prosperity of the minority. Having realized this, which of the 6 mechanisms do you consider the most powerful in your own life? We have disassembled the entire machine. We have examined every gear. However, to halt it, we must identify the primary lever. On one hand, it's a system failure. In that case, the solution lies in political reforms, changes in labor legislation, healthcare reform, debt cancellation. This is the external path. On the other hand, it's a cultural crisis. And then, one must begin with oneself, by rejecting the ideology of hustle culture, by reevaluating personal values, and by building alternative communities. This is the internal path. What needs to change first? Write just one word in the comments: system or culture. This is not merely a comment, it is the beginning of a conversation about how we can reclaim our time.